and welcome to this special edition of Hashtag Griff Sports. I'm Joe Rutigliano, and I'm joined by John Langley and Jourdon LaBarber, the men's basketball beat writers for both the Griffin and Griffin TV. And gentlemen, the men's basketball team got their season underway this past Monday against South Dakota, big 71-66 victory for the Griffs. Now let's just talk a little bit about that victory for the Griffs. Obviously, a team with South Dakota coming in that won only 10 games last year. Were we expecting more from them from the Griffs to maybe beat them by a few more? Or what kind of situation are we looking at now after the game?
Well, I mean, you certainly want to see them win by more because South Dakota did only win 10 games last year. But we've got to remember the Griffs are young and they're fairly new. You know, no Isaac Sosa, no Harold, no Alshwan, no Reggie. That's a lot of experience in the backcourt. So I expected a little less sloppiness, but this is probably what's to be expected early in the season.
And I think Coach Barron made the point at the press conference after the game. You know, we have high expectations for this team coming into this first game because of how well they did last year, and those expectations we're putting on them might be a little unfair to start off.
Yeah, and you know, something that I noticed from my spot in C Block is that, you know, something that the Griffs have been struggling with through both the exhibitions against Damon and Mercyhurst and now in the first game. So our perimeter defense right now for Canisius is just not there. Mm-hmm. And I think part of that, you know, obviously, John, you talked about the lack of backcourt experience. Now, without that backcourt experience, I think that's part of the problem right now. Also, the other thing is Billy Barron's the only returning guard that's played in this system. You know, you've got to. I mean, I'll say it. Chris Perez is probably a stud. He's a good player. He's a good slasher. Gets strong to the hoop. Only problem is he's not been playing in this system for a full, you know, year and a half, 2 years, you know, however long that, you know, Billy's been playing in it. So I think that there's a learning curve there. Now, the other thing, you know, we were just talking about before we got started was, you know, St. Bonaventure played South Dakota on, I believe it was Saturday night, and, you know, Bonaventure pretty much ran them off the court, 68-46 victory. You know, is that going to be something that can we compare the two, Bonaventure and Canisius, through those games? I think
you know, they're the exact opposite of Canisius' situation. Canisius has all these guys, specifically in the backcourt, you know, assimilating into a new system, whereas Bonaventure is a team that's had the same core group of guys together for 4 years now, you know, 3 or 4 years, you know, leading with Charlon Kloof, and I think that showed that they were better prepared to face maybe a subpar team than Canisius was in their opening game. So I don't think we should read too much into it. I think, if anything, you learn that Bonaventure's advantage over Canisius might be their comfortability with each other.
Well, the important thing about non-conference games is, especially in a conference like the MAC, is they are to build your team. They're to get better and better, and they're show-me games. And this is a big challenge for the Griffs backcourt, and the difference in the game was definitely the experience of the backcourt. Because if you look at it, they have multiple players averaging 10.5 points per game, and Kloof is their leading scorer at 13.5, so they have an even distribution of scoring. The Griffs have to find that. Billy Barron scored 27 in their first game, and if they want Billy to carry them the entire year, it might be a struggle. So they have to find that complementary scorer to him.
Right, and also, you know, going into Saturday's game at St. Bonaventure, I think another big thing that Canisius obviously lacks is, you know, experience in the backcourt. Mm-hmm. That's going to play a pretty large role on Saturday at St. Bonaventure. Now, I stepped into the Riley Center on a college visit when I was a senior in high school. Nobody in there. It seemed pretty calm. Come Saturday, it's going to get pretty rowdy. And with, you know, Coach coming back into town to his alma mater, you know, I think that this is going to be a really big game for the Griffs, and I think you guys can elaborate more. I mean, this is going to tell us where we are when we go on the road, when we play in a difficult environment.
Well, I think this is a game that's going to show you how much we trust our bigs. Jourdon, he has to dominate down low, and we know he can shoot. We have to see what he can do down low against a 7-foot opponent. Last year, it was more or less the shooting. The guards for each team kind of put it on display. You know, Harold had some big shots last year. This year, I think it's about the bigs. I think they had Jourdon and Chris and Josiah have to dominate underneath for the Griffs to really make their presence felt. Take a little pressure off the guards.
And yeah, there were games last year where, let's face it, they wouldn't have won without the three-point shot. You know, Isaac Sosa would take over, Harold Washington, even Alshon off the bench. They'd hit a ton of threes, and you know that can create gaps pretty quickly and create wins where they don't have that three-point shooter established yet. And I think another, you know, going to St. Bonaventure, this is also a game where you're going to find out how mentally tough are these freshmen. A guy like Dominic Rainey struggled in his first game. Zach Lewis was a little inconsistent, but hit some big shots. But you know, it's going to be a different atmosphere going against this crowd. It's going to be interesting.
You know, and speaking of freshmen, you know, we talk about guys that are looking to make an impact early on, and I know he's a redshirt, but Phil Valenti played an absolutely fantastic game on Monday. I think he's going to be, and I think one of you guys wrote about it in the Griffin, he's going to be the X factor.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I think that's probably something to look forward to. Him coming off the bench, him having an impact. I mean, he had double-digit rebound numbers on Monday. We need to see that to continue because I think something that we've seen throughout, you know, the time that we've been here is that when Chris Manhertz leaves the floor because of foul trouble, because he needs a rest, whatever, the Griffs, Canisius generally defensively deteriorates a little bit. Our defense isn't as good without him on the floor.
And they don't rebound.
And there you go. We lose the top two rebounder in the conference. That's going to be key is who's going to come off the bench and make that, you know, big impact. Obviously, Josiah Heath is there. He's had a couple of years to really get working on that. I think Phil Valenti is going to be a key guy for the Griffs, not only this weekend, but down the road the entire season. Now, also, what have we seen? I mean, I personally like Jeremiah Williams in the backcourt. I think he's a great change of pace. He's quick. He's athletic. He can get to the rim, and he's generally strong with the ball. He plays great defense. I would like to see him get a few more minutes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, can we expect that sooner or later?
Yeah, I did for the Griffin, I wrote a scouting report on him, and everything you just pointed out is absolutely correct. He's great with the ball. He's athletic. He creates his own shots, and he's a great passer. And the best thing he adds is tight defense. He plays really good defense. I think we can expect more minutes for him coming up. He earned it against South Dakota. He showed great decision making. He was good with the ball, and he was tight on defense. And that's something, let's be honest, the guards haven't shown the last couple years that they can play tight defense, and that's something they need. They need perimeter defense. So I think if you see someone like Zach Lewis or Rainey, because Rainey struggled mightily defensively on Monday, if you see it, I wouldn't be surprised to see a quick yank of the other guard and bringing Jeremiah right in to create a spark, much like Phil Valenti adds to the team. It's about spark. You got to spark your team.
And you need a guy to take the ball up the court when Billy can't. Just to give him rest. I mean, you can't have him, trying out there running the entire offense the entire game. And I think Williams is a guy who can really take some of the pressure off Billy. Kind of switch him over to the two, get him some downtime.
Yeah, and I think one of the main things coming into this weekend is, and I think something the coaching staff probably is focusing on, is how do we take the pressure off of Billy? And I think we've hit on it pretty much there with Phil and with Jeremiah Williams. Those guys are going to be the guys that'll come in and hopefully relieve some of that pressure. And then it's up to the Heath brothers. It's up to Chris Manhertz. It's up to Chris Perez to step up and get a few more buckets. Play some better defense, because let's face it, if the Griffs play the defense that they played Monday night, we're probably not going to beat Bonaventure on the road. Much less worried about Iona, Niagara, Manhattan, those types of teams. And so I'd like to thank John and Jourdon for coming on the show.
Anytime.
And just one last question. Any idea about this weekend? Who comes home with the W?
I think if Canisius plays strong defense, they can win this game. They just have, if they're not going to have games like Monday where the buckets don't drop. So I think if they can get some buckets and they can play solid defense, they can absolutely win.
The guys are going to hate me for it, but not to say it's a stretch to say Canisius can win. I definitely think they can win. But I think St. Bonaventure's got that continuity, having those guys together for so long. Canisius is still kind of, learning how to play together. I think St. Bonaventure, if I had to pick, I'm going to take this game.
And I'm going to say no comment to avoid getting harassed by crowds. All right, folks, thanks for watching. John Langley, Jourdon LaBarber. This is #Griff Sports. We'll be right back.
There was one day that we had just done the cardiovascular unit, in class that day. And then right after class, I went over to the Vascular Institute, volunteered, put the scrubs on. And one of the doctors asked me if I wanted to see an open heart surgery. And so I said, yeah,
really?
sure.
I came into Canisius as obviously as a freshman, not really sure what I wanted to do. I ended up taking a digital media arts class, and that really just kind of jump-started, my career.
And I think being where we are in the city and in the world with the medical campus that we have here is really an opportunity that I wouldn't have anywhere else.
It's more than just academics. Meet different people. Go out and do things. There's so much more to college. It's an experience.
I instantly fell in love with doing video work, graphic design. I started pursuing more and more opportunities in the school, whether it was doing admissions videos on the sides. I did a couple videos for alumni relations, the president of the college, and then I actually got noticed last year, and they sent me over to the Philippines to create a feature-length documentary.
I lived with a host family while I took classes in Spanish with Spanish professors at the University of Oviedo, and I was a Spaniard for a semester, and it was the best decision I made as a college student.
Tell him that I've begun to dream of things to come, and tell the trees not to look for me. I'm going to find some peace of mind. Wake the sun. Wake the sun, wake the sun, wake the sun.
And we're back, and I've got CJ Gates with me from the Griffin, and he's here to talk about the Griff's ice hockey team. And CJ, the Griff's hockey team has been on the road quite a bit lately. what have been some of the recent highlights?
Well, they just wrapped up a 5-game road trip. They only had one win on the road trip against number 17 Denver. The other 4 games, they didn't play very well. They lost to number 6 Miami twice, but Coach Dave Smith said that Miami was the best team that he's coached against in his 9 years here. So even though the Griffs lost, they still put up a good effort, returned home, and got a win against Mercyhurst.
Fantastic. Now, Tony Capobianco, fantastic goaltender for the Griffs last year, has been actually splitting time with Keegan Asmundson in the net for the Griffs this season. What's going on there?
Well, if you look at Tony's stats over the first few games of the season, he hasn't performed very well. He's got a goals against near 5. He's got a save percentage under 88. And Keegan Asmundson's performed when he's been in net. He's got 2 wins in his starts. Sorry. He's got a save percentage around 95. He's got a goals against just over 2. He's really earned it. And when you talk to Coach Smith, he still sees Capobianco as his number 1 goalie, but he thinks that Smith's earned starts through his practice play and his gameplay.
Yeah, and something I've seen my freshman year here 2 years ago, Dan Morrison split time with Tony Capobianco, and then last year we saw Capobianco really get the bulk of the playing time. I think Keegan Asmundson maybe played 2 games.
Yep.
Right. So, maybe some similar type of action here for the Griffs netminders. Who do you think's going to get the games this weekend?
I think they'll split starts again this weekend. There's no reason that Tony shouldn't get a try. He's proved that he can win games in the past, and I think he's just got to work through this rough patch. But Keegan Asmundson's definitely earned a start this weekend.
All right. And who's been the X factor so far for the Griffs?
I think it's been senior defenseman Ben Danford. He's got a point a game, 7 points in 7 games. He's got 5 points on the power play, 2 goals. Not much more you can ask from a defenseman.
Yeah, fantastic. And Danford played really well late in the season last year in that playoff run for the Griffs.
Absolutely.
And has there been really an offensive spark to the Griffs offense right now, or is it kind of? Obviously when you look at this, the standings and their results so far, it looks kind of stagnant for the Griffs. Who's got that spark for the Griffs offense?
I think it's Patrick Sullivan. He scored 2 goals against Mercyhurst, including the game winner in the 3rd period. He's got 3 goals on the season, leads the team in goals. I think he's providing the offensive spark for the Griffs so far this season.
Fantastic. What's up next for the Griffs?
Well, the Griffs this weekend will head to Columbus to take on Ohio State in 2 games, Friday and Saturday, and then they'll return home for their 2nd home game against RIT.
And that'll be a big one. I think that is Mustache Night. It's a nice promotion that the athletic department is doing, for the whole Movember, if you can't tell. And, anything so far that really the Griffs last year kind of started off a little bit slow. Really didn't hit a stride until the last weekend of the regular season.
Yep.
What do you think? When do you think that the Griffs are going to hit the stride? We know this team's a good team. They won their conference tournament last year. They won it all for the Atlantic Hockey Conference. What do you think? When do you think the Griffs are going to hit the stride this year?
I think when they start playing some more in-conference games, they've got a bunch of games against these out-of-conference, kind of highly ranked teams that they won't really face that often. But once they get into the conference schedule, I think the intensity will pick up, and I think their win total will start to rise as well.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, CJ. I'm Joe Rutigliano, and we'll be right back.